hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Dark Souls 2, Crown of the Old Iron King video walkthrough. This is part 1, and we're in the Brume Tower. So, I've just gone from the very first chain to show you a little shortcut that doesn't really skip that much content, but it's a nice, fun thing to do, and you might not have been aware of it. This is in New Game Plus, not New Game Plus. If you're interested in watching this content in New Game Plus cycles, I do have a blind playthrough of it. But this is a walkthrough. Completely different thing. This time we're coming back with brutal efficiency to get through it as swiftly as we can with the least issue. I am currently on a build that has a decent amount of strength, and I'm using the Rusted Iron Twin Blade, which is one of the most powerful weapons available to us at this moment in time, because it has a multi-hit after its first R1, which does a ludicrous amount of damage. As you can see, you can't actually see my weapon because I'm using one of the Conqueror's rings. This is my build that went through the game without dying. And I just thought I'd put the ring on for a little bit because I've not really used it too much, and it's kind of interesting, but outside of PvP it really doesn't seem to have much purpose, and even then when it's in PvP, the movesets of the weapons are so similar, it doesn't really give you that much of an advantage. But this is the very first thing you're going to notice with this part of the DLC, is there's going to be these altars, these Nadalia relics, that you have to stab with those smelter wedges. And those enemies that turned up then were buffed by that altar, so if you're wondering why they had that kind of ashen armour on them, it's for that purpose. They get incredibly powerful when that altar is alive, and as you saw then, these enemies, they come in big groups, they do big damage, and they have multi-swing hits. A lot of the DLCs have these ambushes where you're coming up against a lot of enemies that are incredibly dangerous, and it makes it quite noticeable that the game is trying to up the difficulty. Maybe in response to some people saying the game was too easy, maybe just in response to this reputation that the Dark Souls series seems to have, where people think it's the hardest game ever made, and it always makes me wonder, did these people ever play a Commodore 64 game or a NES game? Because as much as these games are incredibly challenging and taxing at times, you know, they're nowhere near as bad as those titles were. But once you've pressed the switch that I just hit then, it will open these doors indefinitely, and then you'll be able to skip past all these people should you end up dying from them or to them. And it's incredibly easy to do, folks. Dying in the DLCs is so swifter than it is in the main game, because everything just seems to be put to 11 in its dangerousness. But I cleaned up those dudes with a couple of quick chops. You'll notice that I have... my character has +3 on his Estus flask, and I don't know how many flasks I have, but it's not maxed, so you don't really need... Oh wow, here we go, nearly dying to that dude comboing my face off. General rule of thumb on all of the DLCs, this one included, if you hit them before they can do an attack animation, you will kill them. Because they get poise when they swing. It's just like Demon Souls in that regard. They get hyper armor on certain attacks, and a lot of the enemies in this content have a lot of armor, and the game gives them a lot of poise, and it's just one of those things. If you can land the first hit before they start to do their animation, they will flinch and you will kill them. If you can't, they will tank your hit and then they will combo you, which can put you into some pretty dangerous waters. The good news, however, and the beauty of Dark Souls, is that you can play this game any way you want to. You know, you will have a different build to me, you will have different weapons to me, different items to me, and you are free to use all of them in any way that helps you get through the game. So, my character's running around at this moment in time in this stylishly tatty outfit, using a weapon, two-handed, not using shields. That might be something you hate to do, so you want to avoid it at all costs. Ooh, and a really good part of this DLC too. There are a lot of traps you can use for your benefit, and it's one of the coolest features of this entire area. And these little fellas here, you see the guys with the barrels? Obviously, if you touch them with fire, or if you make a spark with your weapon, or if you have fire on your weapon, you're going to blow them up and they do big damage. But you can use them if you have fire arrows, or fire bombs, or any other fire tool to your advantage to kill things, and they're incredibly useful. And there's a couple of areas in this content where you can use that to get a really big advantage in some pretty dangerous rooms. However, one of the rooms where they want you to do this perhaps the most is still kind of annoying in getting it to work. But be careful when you land down here. The guy over there throws firebombs, and the firebombs not only do quite a lot of damage, but they have an interesting tracking to them. A lot of Dark Souls 2 is full of interesting tracking. The firebombs are no different. And be careful killing this guy, because if you accidentally break the chest, you'll lose out on whatever's in it. Probably nothing much, but you never know, do you? So you always want to try and get them. What do we have? Cestus +8. So if you want a fist weapon and you don't want to bother upgrading it, wasting resources, then there you have it. But here is our first bonfire, after the initial bonfire into the area, which you'll notice I skipped at the beginning because I showed you the shortcut. And then from here we can push on forward through the tower. To my right there is a ghost archer who's going to fire his longbow at me. I got immunity in the animation of opening the chest, and we got 3 twinkling titanites, which is pretty damn awesome. Those ghost guys are one of the most interesting enemies in the DLC, because they do very strange, highly telegraphed moves, and I think the balance on them is perfect. I think they're such an interesting and funny character to have in this content, whereas he always does these unconventional swings, but all of them are fair. You never get hit by that enemy and think, that shouldn't have really happened. The only times where that even remotely can become a thing is when he does some of those wide arcing attacks, and of course the wide arcing moves on this game can be pretty suspicious when they hit you when you feel like they shouldn't have, but for the most, he is a beautiful example of an enemy that does everything right. He has range when you're not close to him, he has some devastating combos up close, and he's interesting. He's not just a dude. He's this crazy spectral... I say spectral, he's a spectre. He's kind of a ghost, some kind of phantasm. And he's fun, and he drops a pretty cool weapon. But this right here is the room I mentioned earlier. It's a room where if you exploit where you stand, you can get these dudes to walk away from you, and you can have them enter this chamber. Once they're in this chamber, if they go near any of the enemies, you can then either throw bombs at them or shoot them with arrows to blow them up to kill people that are down in that room. The big dude has shoulder pads that spew forth lava, so he can set them off himself, but it's one of those things where when you want it to happen, it never does. You know, it's like wishing for Christmas. You're not going to make time move any faster, you're just going to look like some senile old woman shouting at pigeons. So just be aware of, you might get super lucky here and have the big fella do exactly what you want him to do, get killed by the barrels and kill everyone else in the room, or you might have a bunch of people showing you just how artfully they can avoid the environmental trap you've set. It doesn't really have any kind of logic to it, it's just... sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And you'll notice my bloodstain is in this room and my life has been affected. I did not get this to work first time. And I think this is the most challenging room in the DLC, because without the barrels, it's a nightmare. And it's an even bigger nightmare on the higher new game cycles, because they have even more enemies here. And it's one of those traps that I believe separates Dark Souls 2 from Dark Souls 1 in the worst possible way. Because it's a trap that is not subtle or intricate, it just exists to stop the player's progress, to impede progress, and philosophically, I don't think that's what traps are. I don't think that's how they functioned in Souls games. They were always smarter than that, they were always better placed, and Bloodborne, the alpha that I've been watching quite a lot of, has some fantastic examples of the philosophy when it works and the philosophy when it's right, and I really adore that. And a great one is the darkened room with the item luring you forward, and then the person in the wheelchair with the gun who looks like a piece of furniture, you know, bless him. It's that moment of, do you go in this room greedily and go for the item and then pay the price, or do you take it slowly and realise that this room is not what it appears? And at no point do you drop down and are you trapped in a room with 10 dudes, because that's a bad trap. And the beauty of traps, or in my opinion, because this is all my opinion, guys. There we go, we finally blew something up. That's what we were waiting for. It took a little while, but we got there in the end. But the beauty of traps, or what I believe the beauty to be, is on the surface a trap should be simple. It should be a binary thing. It should be two different states of the same situation, one of them drastically impeding you, the other one not even touching you. That should be what a trap is, A or B. Two choices. The intricacy should be beneath everything you see. You should never see the intricacy of a trap because then it loses its allure, it loses its power. And my example of a bad trap is a trap that has no intricacy, and even the small components that bring it together, that, you know, conduct it, are bad. And the room we've just traversed is one of those for me. However, it does in fact have some intricacy, because the barrel people give it that, and without it, it'd just be ugly. But with it, it's a little bit more interesting, and it's a room I initially hated that I've come to enjoy a little bit more, but still, I'm not the biggest fan. But that's just me, guys. But undoubtedly, I'll get those people in the comments that don't know the difference between complaint and a critique. But I can live with that, because that's what my channel is about. It's about, you know, critically assessing games in both good and bad respects. Ooh, this is great, but it's also a trap. This is one of my favourite enemies from the DLC. You'll notice I'm running past all of them. You might be wondering why. Just have a look at what's happening right here. It's pretty damn disgusting. Like, it's a narrow path, there is no way around it except for straight through, and enemies are spawning to cock-block you from in front, and what you didn't see is they're also spawning from behind. It's one of the least fair corridors in the entire piece, because it's a trap set just to kill you. It's not got anything interesting to it. It's essentially a pincer attack that I suppose you could see coming, but there's no real signs that the people are going to jump out of the snow. Aside from, there's some snow, maybe someone's going to jump out of it. But we made it to the bonfire. That bit got quite hairy. You can take your time there, should you choose to, and pull them with arrows. Take them on individually, and you can kill them. But there's no real need to, and as you saw, dropping off that hill is not a death sentence as long as you've got high enough life, and it just might save your life. So it was a good thing in the end. My only regret for this video is you didn't get to see those women, because they're really interesting. There's me popping some aromatic ooze, some sticky white stuff onto my weapon, because I know what's coming here. If you hit those Minotaur helmets, why did I say helmets? Minotaur cephalic statues, adornments, what the hell even is that thing? It's some kind of decoration that sprays fire. And there are two of these women, two of these sorceresses here, and they're set in such a way that they make it quite a nightmare for you to do much. Because when you get close to this enemy, it can do this, which is a massive AoE. Do not get caught in that, it can be a death sentence. And also they can do a teleport move, which is really cool, where, wow, iframes denied, where they teleport directly behind you and they do a combo, using the same ring that we can pick up in this DLC. Oh, there's one, just there. She did a little teleport. But the way that this enemy works, and the reason I think it works really well, is because she dies quickly. And this is the kind of nuance to the combat that you don't see on the New Game Plus cycles, because the New Game Plus cycles effectively ruin the game. And they do so because they're just flat out statistical increases. There's no extra moveset, there's no additional patterns or increased aggression. They just literally have a slider that makes them a little bit more resilient to everything. They have higher life and they do more damage. And at some point that slider gets so escalated that you can't even increase your own statistics to keep up with it. Because that's how the games have always kind of worked. And I think the New Game Plus idea in the Souls series is amazing, because it essentially gives people endless replayability. I just never think they've really gone into enough detail with it to make it as good as it could be. And if you're a player who never goes to New Game Plus, who just keeps playing New Game, I don't think you fully see just how egregious the game can be with its scaling. If you're somebody who's gone really high, you know exactly what I mean. And it gets to the point where armor doesn't matter, life doesn't matter, damage doesn't matter, you know, because it all phases itself out so quickly. But thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in part 2. You take care now.